Since 2015, Jared Stillman has rocked Nashville sports.
That team freaking stinks.
And now he's back. The takes are hotter than ever.
I mean, let's be honest, he just can't coach.
Welcome to Stillman and Company.
Stillman & Company on the 440 Sports Network, presented by Hiller Plumbing, Heating, Cooling, and Electrical. My guys, they take great care of my home. We'll get to that in a second. Here on the program, we are on YouTube at Stillman & Company. Like and subscribe. Leave a comment down at the bottom, as we always like to tell people to do. Get those algorithms going, so on and so forth. Let me start by saying this. I am in San Francisco right now. I will be in San Francisco this week. And then I will be at the Super Bowl. And then I'll be back on the Friday before the Super Bowl. And I was originally supposed to fly out today. I was going to watch the conference championship games on the plane. But then with the snow and ice coming into town, I decided to leave on Friday. I mean, my family right now is taking the brunt of it. They have no power like a lot of you guys. They have no heat like a lot of you guys. They have no internet like a lot of you guys. So I'm not expecting the live viewers on today's program to be just massive, given how many people don't have power, how many people need to be saving up their cell phone batteries, and so on and so forth. So again, we appreciate everybody that listens to the podcast, that listens on their own time, that goes back and watches it. I'm sure this information will not be crazy in a couple of hours from now. Everybody, please stay safe. And again, some of the pictures and some of the things going on just seem horrific and very, very scary. I remember the ice storm of 94 in Nashville, and it seems like we're having another similar ice storm there. So again, everybody stay safe. Let's start with that. Okay. First, let me tell you about Hiller Plumbing, Heating, Cooling, and Electrical, and then we'll get to the offensive coordinator because we need to get to the offensive coordinator. Hiller Plumbing, Heating, Cooling, and Electrical is the proud presenting sponsor of this program. They've been in business since 1990. They are family owned and operated. With 100% satisfaction of happy you'll be, or the service is free. I know this because I use Hiller at my home. I mean, I told you guys last week, like, if you got issues, especially with your heating, and you want to make sure it gets done before the storm comes, call Hiller. Get them out there now. Hiller, I don't know exactly what their operation schedule is, but Hiller's pretty good about getting on the road through thick and thin. That's Hiller Plumbing, Heating, Cooling, and Electrical. They take great care of my home. They can do the same for you. They're professional, experienced. They've got trustworthy technicians that come into your home, and they leave it clean and better than they found it. They are a proud supporter of the Predators. They are a proud supporter of Vanderbilt and of UT. That's Hiller. Call the Happy Face Truck today. We will be probably an hour today because I'm getting right to the conference championship games like many of you. Okay. So let's start with the offensive coordinator and the first couple of days of the Robert Saleh administration. And the first thing I want to start with is when Robert Saleh was hired, I even felt like there was going to be somebody who was going to be the offensive coordinator, who was a Shanahan guy, who did things the Robert Saleh, the Kyle Shanahan way, that was part of this great plan that apparently won everybody over, right? Like that there was going to be something with Robert Saleh where this is what the reporting said. Albert Breer said their meeting with Robert Saleh, again, he only did one interview. Everybody else that was a finalist, which I guess was Matt Nagy, did two interviews. Mike McCarthy had a meeting, and then Mike McCarthy flew out there and had an interview. Robert Saleh only had one interview and got the job that night. And Albert Breer said that Robert Saleh wowed everybody in the room with his plan for Cam Ward. Wowed Amy, wowed Borgonzi, wowed Chad Brinker, wowed Reggie McKenzie, wowed Dave Ziegler, and wowed Dan Sagany, because I guess that's the hiring committee group. And I understand that when it came to Robert Saleh and when it came to a head coach, and they were very clear about this, they were more worried about a leader head coach than they were worried about an offensive guru to call the plays to develop the quarterback. Fine. I totally get it. But developing the quarterback and the offensive guru is a very important part of this entire process if this is going to work with Cam Ward as the quarterback. And so he wows them with Cam as the quarterback with his plan. And then it's reported that his plan was so detailed that it was going to continue on even if they lost the offensive coordinator to a head coaching job, which is the biggest fear when you've got a young quarterback with hiring a defensive coach. You hire a defensive coach, you develop the young quarterback, the offensive coordinator is going to get a head coaching job. Apparently, Robert Saleh had a plan in place that was so good, according to Albert Breer, and I'm guessing Albert's going to be on our show at the Super Bowl. They had a plan that was so good that it totally wowed him. What's the plan? And that's the first thing is, if Robert Saleh had this great plan for Cam Ward, then shouldn't they have it pretty locked down who's going to implement the plan for Cam Ward? And sometimes I think we look at the NFL and we look at a coach and we say this guy is either a strategic guru or he's a leader of men. The truth is, Sean McVay is both. And that's what you really want when it comes to a head coach in the NFL. Robert Saleh is a great leader of men, but at some point, the Titans are going to have good strategy if they're going to be able to beat some of these other teams they're playing that are trying to do the exact same thing that they're trying to do. So when you say that we've got a plan for Cam Ward and we just wowed everybody with our plan, I'd like to know what the plan is. And I know that they won't tell you what the plan is. Even when Robert Saleh finally comes back from whatever it is he's doing that the local media will not tell you about. I don't know for sure what he's doing, but I've heard the rumors, and Paul was kind of talking about how he thought he got some shit for this, about the idea that he could have, had his press conference a little bit earlier. Again, I guess Robert Saleh is busy. And that's why Robert Saleh hasn't had his press conference, and I don't think is in town. And I think it's a little bit warmer than you and I. And I'm in San Francisco, and I think he's warmer than me. But I do think that, even though he'll never answer what this grand plan is for Cam, other than, this is going to be the most important thing we do, and everything we do is going to be about a plan for Cam, and blah, 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 blah. He won't tell you what it is that he told Amy. He won't tell you what it is that he told Mike Borgonzi. Even though they won't tell you what the grand plan is, I'm kind of looking for the clues as to whether or not this plan that you had actually seems to be real. And the first thing that I think would be a pretty obvious tell is if you get the guy to implement the plan. Robert Saleh is a defensive coach, and Robert Saleh is going to be coaching defense. So when it comes to Robert Saleh running the defense, you know that you have to have a head coach of the offense to develop Cam Ward. I think Josh McDaniels is a great example of this with Drake May in New England. What's hilarious about this, and you guys know Vrabel, what's hilarious about this is if the Patriots win today and they go to the Super Bowl and everybody talks about how great Vrabel is, and maybe Vrabel's better than I thought he was as far as leading the team and everything else, what won't get brought up is the fact that the Josh McDaniels thing, that's Robert Kraft. That's not Mike Vrabel. Robert Kraft had the plan for the quarterback. The plan was Josh McDaniels. And, of course, New England's in a great spot because McDaniels has been fired twice as a head coach, and no one's going to want to hire him. So he's going to be the offensive coordinator for a long time for Drake May, unless Vrabel and he get sideways. It's great. But that's a plan. And, again, that was Kraft's plan, but it's not like it was hard to figure out. It wasn't hard for them to implement. It was, we hired Mike Vrabel. Well, we'll figure out offensive coordinator. Okay, we've done our Rooney Rule interviews on the offensive coordinator. Josh McDaniels is the guy. Done. That's what needed to happen here. Is it needed to be Robert Saleh has a plan. And so Robert Saleh gets the job, and boom, Mike McDaniel is the offensive coordinator. Boom, Clay Kubiak is the offensive coordinator. Boom, Bobby Slowik is the offensive coordinator. Instead, The Titans put it out there through Tom Pelissero that they were considering Daboll, Arthur, Slowik, Kingsbury, and Adam Stenavich. And as of now, Bobby Slowik is staying with the Miami Dolphins, which I thought was probably going to happen because Halfley comes from Green Bay, and Green Bay kind of runs that same system. And so Slowik, I figured, would stay with the Dolphins. He already knows the personnel. They're going to really have to overhaul the quarterback situation there, though it would not surprise me to see Mac Jones as the quarterback of the Dolphins next year. Crazy, but again, Slowik, San Francisco guy, etc. So that's the first thing was, okay, Slowik's off the board. Then yesterday, I'm doing Sirius XM radio, and we're talking about Mike McCarthy taking the Steeler job, and Arthur Smith goes off the board to Ohio State. Now, I don't know why Arthur, who last year was not interested in interviewing for the North Carolina job, the head coaching job at North Carolina, where they wanted him over Bill Belichick, and he went to North Carolina, and he wasn't interviewing for the head job last year, and now he's the OC at Ohio State. I don't understand it unless there was nothing else out there for Arthur. I actually thought Arthur would have been the perfect hire. I know everybody has their heart set on Daboll, and I'm cool with Daboll too. But I actually thought Arthur would have been the perfect hire because I don't think Arthur's getting a head coaching job no matter how well he does with Cam Ward. It's almost like McDaniels 2.0. But again, the issue here is whoever gets the offensive job with the Titans has got to be the head coach of the offense and has got to hire the offensive coaching staff. Because Robert Saleh does not know how to hire offensive assistants. Unless he learns something magically in a year, he does not know how to hire offensive assistants. Robert Saleh's last act as head coach of the New York Jets was to strip the play calling from Nathaniel Hackett and give the play calling to Todd Downing. His last hiring cycle as head coach of the New York Jets involved picking up Keith Carter to coach the offensive line and Todd Downing to be the passing game coordinator. Disaster. So if that's the quality of offensive coach Robert Saleh can get on his own, you're in deep shit if Robert Saleh cannot get a head coach of the offense to implement this grand plan that he had for Cam Ward. Now, the reason that I think that I'm very concerned about this plan, and I keep bringing it up, is because it would have been one thing if you said, hey, we have this grand plan for Cam Ward, and then the grand plan gets implemented, and it doesn't matter which one of the Shanahan coaches that you have implementing the plan, but you're going to do things the Shanahan way, or you're going to do things the Andy Reid tree way. So you're going to bring in, whether it's Frank Reich, Doug Peterson, Matt Nagy, whomever that runs the Andy Reid offense, you're going to bring that guy in. And if you can't get Matt Nagy, then you're going to get Doug Peterson. And if you can't get Doug Peterson, then you're going to get Frank Reich. And if you can't get Frank Reich, then you're going to get, one of those guys. And they really have kind of been all over the place, right? Yes, technically Arthur's a West Coast offense guy, and Kingsbury's a West Coast offense guy, but Kingsbury and Arthur really don't run the same offense. Brian Daboll is an Earhart Perkins guy. Adam Stenavich with the Packers, again, West Coast offense, probably closest to Arthur in how they run it. He's an offensive line coach who's never called plays. That guy cannot be head coach of the offense. So now I'm circling back to, well, if Brian Daboll is not the hire, then what was the plan? And how can you have a great plan if you're not an offensive coach and you don't know who the offensive coach is going to be to implement the plan? And I asked Easton Freeze about that when he was on the show last week, and Easton's got good insight as far as the Titans are concerned. And I said to Easton, I go, well, so wait a minute. If we don't know who's going to run the plan, then how do we know that there's a plan? And Easton said, well, I think the plan is more philosophical than it is strategic. And I thought, That's the plan that wowed them? So what's the strategic plan? Like I told you guys, I didn't want Cam Ward. I wanted Sam Darnold. I would have taken the picks, and then I would have built a team around Sam Darnold. That's a philosophical plan. That's not a strategic plan. If I start telling you about, well, we're going to go ahead and we're going to trade for Gardner Minshew, and then we're going to run, double X, queen wide ZX, and we're going to move the slot into that's strategic. And I'm not smart enough to tell you that I know jack shit about the strategic side of this. But I also know that Robert Saleh doesn't either. Now, he knows more about it than I do. But Robert Saleh can't coach offense. And so if the plan is philosophical, what could his plan for Cam Ward have been that was just so good? And that's why, again, I bring this up because I think it's kind of bullshit. And I saw this with Ran Carthon very early on. This beginning of the Saleh era is very concerning. Let's just be real. And this is without throwing Saleh under the bus. And this is without saying Saleh has done a bad job, because I don't know that, or saying that Saleh has failed or is going to fail, because I don't know that. It hasn't happened. I'm not predicting that Robert Saleh is going to fail. I have not said that yet. But Robert Saleh has been the coach for 6 days. Got the job on Monday night. We have not heard, outside of a statement that ChatGPT could have made, from Robert Saleh at all. We have not seen one interview from Robert Saleh. Where's he been? We've heard names the Titans are interested in interviewing for the offensive coordinator position, but have we heard about any interviews for the offensive coordinator spot? I don't think we have. So, again, I'm not reporting anything that I don't know for sure, but I do wonder where Robert Saleh is right now. And I think that's a question that you should ask your local media people, Buck, Easton, Paul, TD, the guys, the local scribes that cover this team. Where is Robert Saleh? Is he interviewing offensive candidates right now? And that's very concerning, because philosophically speaking, if I was the general manager of the Titans, and I want to use the word philosophically here, and I want you to hear that and know that I'm talking not specifically about Saleh and the current situation, but just philosophically. If I was a general manager of an NFL team, and I was arguably one of the worst teams in the NFL, and I knew that we had a lot of work to do, and I knew that my ass was tied to this coaching hire and to the quarterback that I drafted last year, and that we better get it right. Again, not talking about Saleh specifically, philosophically. And I hire a head coach, and the head coach tells me he needs a vacation before he can get to work, we're going to have problems. Like, I'm not going to hire that head coach if he's got to go on a tropical vacation before I can make him the head coach and he can get to fucking work and can go figure out who the offensive coordinator of the football team is. And it's okay. Like, if you're not in a position from a family standpoint or personal standpoint or what, I'm not talking about anybody's business, but if you're not in position to take the job on Monday night, again, philosophically speaking, if you're not in position to take the job on Monday night and get your ass to work on Tuesday, then I'll go hire somebody who can. I mean, I'm already making an exception to hire a 20-36 coach who stunk with the Jets. I'm already making an exception hiring a coach, knowing that we have to develop a young quarterback for a guy who had the number 2 pick in the draft and failed. I'm already making an exception for a guy who was part of the decision in New York to move on from Sam Darnold because they wanted to go with Zach Wilson. So I'm already making all these exceptions for Robert Saleh because he's such a great leader and he's such a great coach and he's so well respected and we didn't even know him. I need you to get the offensive coordinator figured out. And, I mean, again, I think the Hail Mary here is Daboll, because I absolutely believe that Brian Daboll can be the head coach of the Tennessee Titans offense. But I think Daboll is going to be the next head coach of the Bills. I, on Sirius yesterday, had Sal Powell on the program. And Sal Powell, I mean, it was crazy because Sal Powell was coming on the show because he was in Denver for the AFC Championship game with ESPN. And I figured that's what we would talk about, Sal Powell. And Sal Powell, you know, he wanted to talk about Harbaugh. And then McCarthy got hired. So we talked at length about McCarthy and we talked about Aaron Rodgers. And I'm like, Sal Powell, what is going to happen in Buffalo? And Sal Powell, Antonio, didn't say Buffalo's going to hire Daboll, but he said, I don't know where they go if they don't go with Brian Daboll. And that I think the people that Sal Powell talks to, they were of the belief that they don't know where they go if they don't get Brian Daboll. And then Brian Daboll interviewed yesterday for the Raiders job. And I think that is worth talking about because Tom Brady is running the Raiders and Brian Daboll coached Tom Brady in New England. And so I could see Brian Daboll, you can't get Josh McDaniels because you already got him and that didn't work out. You can't get Bill Belichick because he's lost his fucking mind. So now you're in a spot where I could see Brady hiring Brian Daboll and saying, okay, Brian, the same thing you guys are saying. Okay, Brian Daboll, you are going to coach Cam Ward. Okay, Brian Daboll, you are going to coach Fernando Mendoza. So I don't think you're going to get Daboll because I think Daboll's getting a head coaching job. The question is Buffalo or Vegas. I think he's getting one. So if Daboll is out and Arthur is out and Bobby Slowik is out of the list that Pelissero put out there earlier in the week, which again had to come directly from the Titans, you're stuck with Kingsbury, who I'm not a big fan of, and Adam Stenavich, who is a non-starter for me because Adam Stenavich has never called plays. The Titans need a head coach of the offense. The Titans don't need somebody who has to learn how to be an offensive coordinator on the job. Salah's going to run the defense. Bones Fossil's going to run the special teams. I'm fine with both of those. When you hire Salah to be the head coach, what you're doing is you're saying, okay, you're going to farm out the offense to somebody who knows offense, and then you are going to speak both for the team and speak to the team. When there's a dispute internally with the team, it's your call. When your ass is on the line as to, do we challenge here? That's your call, although you'll have somebody up in the booth telling you what to do. When the team is not doing well, you're the one who's got to face the music. That's what the money's for. But Robert Saleh is coaching the defense, not coaching the quarterback. And nobody expected Robert Saleh to coach quarterback. Mike Vrabel's not coaching the quarterback. We know Mike Vrabel's not coaching the quarterback in New England. Now, he may kind of keep Drake in line of like, hey, Drake, I want you to say this at the podium. Hey, Drake, I want you to do this. Hey, Drake, we're going to run the ball here. Hey, Drake. But he's not strategically helping out Drake May. They have a head coach of the offense there. So to me, Stenavich is a non-starter, having never called a play, and he's not a quarterback guy. He's an offensive line guy. So now you're stuck with Kingsbury. It has to be Kingsbury if Daboll gets a head job. And then there are all these other offensive coordinator jobs that are open, and you have to want Kingsbury to take your job over taking somebody else's job. And if you don't get Kingsbury, again, I go back to, so what's the grand plan? I'm not going to sit here and tell you that there's nobody out there because we don't know the names of quarterback coaches that could go on to be great head coaches. Because we don't. There are quarterbacks coaches. There are wide receivers coaches. There are tons of guys in the league that we don't know about that are great schemers, that are great football guys, that are great quarterback developers who in 2 years will be Clint Kubiak. But the Titans don't need a guy who in 2 years can be the head coach of the offense. They need a guy who yesterday could be head coach of the offense. And if you're going with Adam Stenavich, what's this grand plan for Cam? And so I am concerned by what I've seen in the last week. Again, I'm not saying that Robert Saleh is going to fail. I'm not saying that Robert Saleh is a bad coach or that was a bad choice, or I'm not saying that. But I am saying that over the last 6 days, I'm a little concerned. Number one, we had the report that came out the second that Salah was hired from TD on ESPN stationary. I know it's been retracted. I know PK has said up and down it's not true, but we had the report that Mike Borgonzi didn't want Robert Saleh. He wanted Matt Nagy. I'm not here to say whether or not that's true or not. I will just say that I am not as convinced from what I have heard as everybody else is that report is not true. So that's kind of the first, that seems a little odd. Then there was talk about this grand master plan for Cam Ward, and that's to get the 20-36 defensive coach, to get the fans on board with hiring a 20-36 defensive coach, which they did. And so you get them on board with, hey, this is a grand plan, and this is an awesome plan for Cam. And then you immediately come out with a list of guys. You say, hey, these are the guys that we think we can get to be the offensive coordinator. And it was a reputable list of names. But now you're banking on Brian Daboll, who is interviewing right now for 2 head coaching jobs in which there's a legitimate connection to both jobs. Daboll, of course, was the offensive coordinator in Buffalo. Daboll has coached Tom Brady. That's kind of concerning. Arthur takes a college job. Slowik gets promoted. Diana Rossini reported yesterday that Clay Kubiak, who I figured was the break the glass in case of emergency candidate, because Clay Kubiak is right now the right-hand man to Kyle Shanahan in San Francisco, the way that Clint Kubiak at one point was the right-hand man to Kyle Shanahan, the way that Mike McDaniel was the right-hand man, the way that Bobby Slowik was the right-hand man. I thought, okay, if worse comes to worse, then they can hire Clay Kubiak, but Diana Rossini said Clay Kubiak staying put. So he's not an option. In theory, they could hire Mike LaFleur from the Rams, but it looks like Mike LaFleur is going to get the Arizona Cardinals job. And so if he's going to get a head coaching job, he certainly wouldn't want to be the offensive coordinator here. And again, would you rather be the non-play calling OC of the Rams or the play calling OC of the Titans? I'd rather be the non-play calling OC of the Rams, because if I am the non-play calling OC of the Rams, then I can go get another job, be a head coach. So this is a long-winded way of me saying I'm worried about what's going to happen on the offensive coordinator front. Now, there's all these guys I've never heard of who are interviewing for the defensive coordinator job. Don't give a shit. I don't give a rat's ass about who's on the defensive coaching staff. I look at the defense and I think, Robert Saleh, you got the defense. Because whoever the defensive coordinator for the Titans is going to be, it's really just going to be like a Nick Holtz thing, like a Nick Holtz 2.0. Because Robert Saleh is running the defense. He's calling the plays. He's going to draw up the schemes. That's all him. So I don't care about defense. And we know special teams is set. I am worried. I am worried about this offensive coordinator situation if Brian Daboll gets a head coaching job. And are we sure to go all in on believing the Diana Rossini report that Daboll is going to take the Titans offensive coordinator job over an Eagles, over another team out there, that he's going to take that job if he doesn't get the Bills or the Raiders head coaching job? And I don't know to take that as gospel or not. Again, it was a Diana report, and Diana put it out there. And as soon as Diana put it out there, everybody was like, okay, they're going to get Brian Daboll, because we all assumed that the Bills weren't going to hire Brian Daboll. Now we're sitting here saying, who the fuck are the Bills going to hire? Well, they're probably going to hire Brian Daboll. So that's a rough spot to be in. So between the fact that we had the report that came out when Salah got hired that was very skeptical, we were told of a grand plan for Cam Ward, and we see the offensive coordinator candidates that the Titans told everybody about dwindling away one by one, which if it's not Daboll or Kingsbury, there would certainly be room to panic. And then there's, again, just what I am curious about. Again, ask your local beat guys. I'm in San Francisco, so I'm not a beat guy, and I'm not a reporter, and I'm not a... Where the hell's Robert Saleh? What's he doing? Why didn't he do a press conference on Wednesday or Thursday? before the storm came. Why are we waiting until Wednesday of next week? So make of that what you will. That's where we are as far as the Robert Saleh thing is concerned. And again, I know you people are proud. I haven't even looked at the chat yet. I'm sure you people are like, it'll be fine, Jared. It'll be fine. It'll be fine. It'll be fine, because everybody loves the new guy. But again, philosophically, not saying this is what's happening with Daboll or with Salah, because I don't know. Philosophically, I don't like the idea of a head coach getting hired and having to take a vacation. I really don't like the idea of anybody getting hired for any job and saying, that's great, I got to take a vacation. But I certainly don't like it when it's head coach of an NFL team. Not that I'm saying Saleh's taking a vacation. I'm just saying philosophically, I don't like it. So that's where I am. Now, I do want to look at the chat and see what you guys are saying and who you think they're going to end up getting. And the question I guess I have with you guys is, are you as worried about this as I am? Like, I'm worried about this. Because, again, I mean, you people, when you guys wanted Saleh, you guys are telling me, oh, my God, the dream of Saleh and Mike McDaniel. Those guys, that's just perfect. Oh, here we go. Maybe it's not up to Saleh when they have an introductory press conference. Again, I'm not worked up about when the press conference is. I'm more worked up about where Saleh is right now. And I don't know where Saleh is. Again, ask your local beat guys. They're the ones that do the reporting. Kyle says, what worries me is the supposed plan. Seems like a lie. Duh. That's my issue. Again, it's like it's not criminal that Robert Saleh, again, we don't know where he is, and he hasn't held a press conference. And it's not criminal if Robert Saleh hires some guy to be the next head coach of the offense as the OC, who's a first-time play caller, who's a first time doing this. I guess technically it could work out. But this is not the kind of stuff that I envisioned when, again, they told me that they had this grand master plan that was basically coach-proof. And then Easton tells me, well, it's more philosophical than it is. Why are Jarrett Stidham's kids crying? It's more philosophical than it is strategic. I'm like, oh, shit. It's more philosophical than it is strategic. And if you were this desperate to make Brian Daboll your OC because you think Brian Daboll's the guy to save Cam, then you should have just hired Brian Daboll to be the coach. One person says, it's why I was not high on Saleh. He has not shown that he can put together an offensive staff. I was always team Mike McCarthy. But I tell you, Mike McCarthy is so polarizing. I was talking to all these guys, all these callers yesterday on Sirius that were just like, yo, Mike McCarthy is a great hire for the Steelers. He's awesome. They're going to be great. And then the next guy, this is a terrible hire. He sucked in Dallas. He has this. Again, I think Pittsburgh made the right call. I don't know what they're going to do at quarterback, but I think they made the right call. George in Murfreesboro goes 3-14 back-to-back years, but I need to relax. 3-14, and you hired a 20-36 coach. You hired a 20-36 defensive coach who busted on a quarterback in New York, whose last offensive decision in his life was to make Todd Downing his play caller. And then he got fired like 5 minutes after he did that. And we're supposed to relax? It'll be fine. It'll be fine. Again, fine. If you guys want to live in the it'll be fine season and want to pretend that Callahan's Pee Wee program is going to get guys to be accountable, be my guest. But I will just say this is concerning. One guy says, not if we get Kingsbury or Stenavich as the offensive coordinator. Again, Stenavich is a non-starter for me. I look at the offensive coordinator position of the Titans, and I look at it as like this part now to me is non-negotiable. It was negotiable at the beginning of this if you wanted to get a first-time head coach, play caller, offensive guy, if you wanted to make him the coach. So if you wanted to make Mike LaFleur the head coach, well, now the non-negotiable to me is you got to get a guy on defense, and you better really coach up Cam Ward. Stefanski, who was a loser, Arthur, who was a loser, Mike McDaniel, who was a loser, Nagy, who was a loser. It's like, okay, you are going to coach the quarterback. Well, if you want to go get a defensive coach, then we know that the defensive coach is not coaching the quarterback. You better go get somebody that can coach the quarterback, that can be the Josh McDaniels for your operation. And to me, that is a non-negotiable. Somebody that has experience, that has an offensive coaching staff in mind, so that it's not Salah hiring guys he knows, because again, Salah's offensive coaching staff with the Jets, both the Mike LaFleur era, but more importantly afterwards with Nathaniel Hackett and Todd Downing, was a total fucking disaster. So to me, I look at it and I'm like, all right, if you're going to hire the defensive coach who has proven in the past that he can put together as a head coach a top 5 defense in the league, but is really shitty when it comes to offense, you have to go hire a head coach of the offense, and the head coach of the offense has to hire most of his offensive coaching staff, and the philosophy has to belong to the head coach of the offense. Fine. But if you hire Adam Stenavich, this guy has never been a play caller before because Matt LaFleur calls the plays in Green Bay. This guy is not a quarterback's coach. He's an offensive line coach. This is what happened in Green Bay. Because you guys know, when it comes to coaching hierarchy, it's head coach, offensive coordinator, quarterback's coach, line coach. So what happened was everybody wanted Aaron Rodgers or wanted a piece of the Aaron Rodgers, and everybody. So what happened in Green Bay was Nathaniel Hackett goes to Denver because they are desperate to get Aaron Rodgers. They don't get Aaron Rodgers. It's a disaster, but Nathaniel Hackett gets hired away. Then Luke Getsy, who was the quarterback's coach, ends up as the offensive coordinator in Chicago because he's the guy who's going to save Justin Fields. That was a disaster. Well, they lose both those guys. They promote Stenavich up. So now Stenavich has come up, and he's not a quarterback guy. And granted, the offensive line of the Titans improved last year. I'm not against an offensive line guy, going in there and making the line better. But the whole premise of this thing working is Cam Ward developing. And that's coming from me. That is coming from me as somebody who's not even a Cam Ward believer. But if you're going to make this work with Robert Saleh, and he's going to do better than 20-36, it's going to be because Cam Ward, who you drafted number 1 overall to carry your franchise, carries your franchise. And that's where we sit. So, again, on a panic scale, I would say I'm at a 7. 7 out of 10. And 7's not bad, I don't think. But it has not been a good week. Again, Robert Saleh got the job. And what Robert Saleh has to do is he has to convince people that the Jets fiasco was a Jet problem. Now, you can convince Amy, but Amy has proven that she is not very smart when it comes to these type of decisions. But you've got to prove that the Jets thing was a fiasco and that you really are an adult in the room. And I don't even know if he's in town. For whatever that's worth. Joe says, Titans had all this time to prepare for a head coaching hire, and they're still behind the 8 ball. Again, best case scenario here, Brian Daboll does not get a head coaching job. Again, Sal Pal yesterday seemed very resigned to the fact that he thinks Daboll is going to get the Bills job. But best case scenario for me is that Brian Daboll doesn't get the job and you can hire Brian Daboll to be the offensive coordinator. One guy said, who would you suggest, Jared? This would be done because I would have hired Bobby Slowik. I would have made the Dolphins hire Bobby Slowik 5 minutes after Robert Saleh got hired. Because I think if anybody won last weekend, it's Bobby Slowik, who took all the blame in Houston and was completely scapegoated for the regression from year 1 to year 2 with C.J. Stroud. And in hindsight, C.J. Stroud this year and in these playoffs fucking stunk. And I think he is toasting Houston, and they're going to give him $1 gazillion. And I think that's good news for the Titans because I think that's a mess. So Bobby Slowik might be a good coach. I would have tried to hire him. What are you going to do there? Again, Robert Saleh has to prove to us that everything bad that happened in New York is not going to happen here. And the number one problem he had was his offensive coaching staff. Jake Asman, who a host for ESPN New York, came on our show this past week, and Jake said that not one offensive player improved under Robert Saleh, that Garrett Wilson and Breece Hall showed up and were already good. And then everybody else, not one guy improved on the offensive side of the ball, which told me if Saleh's going to put together the number 3 defense and the number 4 defense in the NFL, that's great, but you better farm out the offense to somebody who can coach it. And right now, if we're banking on Cliff Kingsbury, that is not a place I want to be from where I sit. TDG says, get Cliff's agent on line 1, please. Again, I don't know why everybody loves Kingsbury so much. I know that Jaden Daniels had a good rookie season. I am concerned when it comes to Jaden Daniels and the offense's regression. Now, Jaden Daniels got hurt, but the offense's regression in year 2, I'm concerned with Cliff. I'm also concerned with the fact that he and Dan Quinn didn't work. And so maybe Cliff's the guy. I saw somebody on Twitter, I can't remember who was like, Kingsbury needs to be a college coordinator, which is what he was before Arizona just went Leroy Jenkins and hired him to be the coach because he was supposed to be the guy to unlock Kyler Murray. But hey, when it comes to Cliff, if that's what you have to do to hire a head coach of the offense, I'll take it. I certainly like that more than him being head coach. People in the chat are asking about Nagy, saying, what about Matt Nagy as the offensive coordinator? Matt Nagy's contract not renewed in Kansas City. They brought back Eric Bieniemy, which I was a little surprised by because Kansas City just absolutely drug Eric Bieniemy's name through the mud when they decided to let his contract expire, and he went to go coach Washington. But I guess Andy Reid is so afraid of somebody that he doesn't know helping him out or whatever, that I guess Andy Reid has said, all right, well, bring me more of the same with Bieniemy. Nagy's out there. I'll just say this, and I don't know if this is Nagy's fault. I don't know if this is Nagy's representation's fault. I am not casting any accusations here after what happened with that TD report on Monday night. And I don't know who TD's sources were. And I'm not even going to try to pretend like I know who TD's sources were. After the TD report Monday night, what I've gathered is I would be shocked if the Titans hired Matt Nagy. That's what I would say. Unless the narrative behind the scenes is all bullshit, and that could be a possibility. One name that hasn't been brought up is Mike Kafka. I don't know where Mike Kafka is headed. I could see if you don't get Daboll, I could see you bringing in Mike Kafka to be your play calling OC. He was with Kafka with the Giants, or with Daboll with the Giants. He was with Borgonzi with the Chiefs. Maybe Kafka is the guy in the back, but I don't know. One guy says, I 100% believe the initial TD report. I wouldn't say I 100% believe it, but I'll tell you this, I don't 100% doubt it. And again, I just wonder, where is Robert Saleh? Again, ask your local beat guys about that one. Kyle says, already getting on PK's nerves will lead to great content this summer. Guys, I don't know if you've noticed this about PK, but PK had a lot of info on the coaching search, but it seemed like a lot of info that the Titans wanted you to know that wasn't always necessarily what the truth was. Or like, for instance, Easton Freeze had the report that Mike McCarthy was really having a second interview. And Paul came out right away and was like, no, that's not true. And then we come to find out, and Adam Schefter reports that Borgonzi and Brinker flew to Wisconsin and had dinner with McCarthy. Now, I don't know what you guys thought they talked about at dinner, but I'm going to guess it wasn't what their favorite Netflix show was. I bet you it wasn't Who's Looking Good on OnlyFans. I'm thinking they sat down with Big Mike to talk about football and the head coaching position with the Titans. Hate to say it, that's an interview. I mean, look, I've been to lunch, dinner with executives and stuff, people that have hired me, and I've been to lunch and dinner with people that haven't hired me, and it may not technically be an interview, but it's an interview. I've also interviewed with people before who I knew weren't going to hire me. Which one's more of an interview? So Paul comes out and he's like, no. That was not an interview. Even though that's semantics, it obviously was an interview. And then we come to find out that the reason why the Titans didn't want it out there, that was really a second interview with McCarthy and not really a first interview with McCarthy, was because technically it wasn't open season for them to be interviewing coaching candidates for whatever reason. So I just feel like a lot of Kaharski's reporting has been very friendly in nature to the Titans. Kind of like when I called him out for having all those friendly statements about Chad Brinker when Rand Carthon was still the general manager. He just crush Rand and then defend Brinker. And I put a mashup together of all of his defending Brinker. And then he had to kind of walk back his defensive Brinker for a little bit. I think that might be a little quid pro quo for all of these little minor details that Kaharski gets to report. You notice how they don't give him, they give it to Adam Schefter, who the coach is going to be. But he was pumping Salah's tires for a while before Saleh got the job. And he was the one that had all the little minor things about, Lori Locust not coming back, which who gives a shit? But that's the stuff that they were giving him. Or pumping Luke Stalker's tires, who happens to be retained by the organization. Even though Robert Saleh doesn't know Luke Stalker from a jar of Vicks, they've decided to retain Luke Stalker. A month ago, Kaharski was talking to Robbie and Joe, and he said that Luke Stalker deserves more credit for the Titans playing better than Mike McCoy did. And I'm like, holy shit. How is the tight ends coach worthy of more praise than the head coach when the offense is playing better? Paul's like, well, I talk to people. No, these people at the Titans, like Luke Stalker, they tell Paul. And again, they kept Luke Stalker. I'm just going to keep doing that, by the way. Like, if you're listening to the podcast, you can't see it on the camera, but I've been doing a lot of winking into the camera, which I do like. I hope you guys are enjoying this. One person says Davis Webb will be the next quarterback of the Bills. Is that official? Is that like an Adam Schefter reporting that they'll announce it, or that it'll be like Kellen Moore last year where everybody was waiting for? And I don't know. I guess Benjamin Albright said maybe they're waiting to interview someone that they can't interview yet. I keep looking and I keep trying to figure out, okay, when you say that it's going to be Davis Webb, which is crazy because Davis Webb has been pushed in the insider circles. But Albert Breer came on the show like 5 minutes after Callahan got fired and was talking about Davis Webb. And I was like, Davis Webb, the former third-round quarterback, he's a big candidate? I'm trying to see if Schefter or somebody like that is saying that Davis Webb's going to get the job. Again, Sal Powell said yesterday that he thinks Daboll's going to be the coach. I do want to get to the conference championships, and we'll get out of here before we kick off. 2 games, and both mean a lot to me. And I may go live after the games. I may not. I will not be doing shows this week. I will be back next Saturday. Just like when Tom Brady took that week off of training camp, sometimes there's just certain things in life you got to do, and that's why I'm already out here. And so I will be off the entire next week, which is why I felt like I've done so many of these extra shows this week. And maybe I'll miss an offensive coordinator hire, which would crush me. But again, some things in life you just have to do. But I may go live tonight. I don't know. But this is a big, big day for me. Because on one hand, the great Mike Vrabel has a chance to coach the New England Patriots into the Super Bowl. And we can sit here and complain about how easy of a schedule the New England Patriots had in order to get to this point. We can talk about the fact that Charger offensive line was a mess. We can talk about the fact that C.J. Stroud was fucking garbage last week. And I think that Texan defense is so good that if Jarrett Stidham had played quarterback for the Texans last week, they would have won that game. And now they get to play a backup quarterback in the AFC title game. They're favored by 4.5 points. Again, it's hard for me as somebody who was in favor of them firing Mike Vrabel. It's hard for me to say that I was right, even though I didn't want to give Vrabel full control. And I certainly don't think that Vrabel would have had the Titans in the AFC Championship game with Will Levis at quarterback. It's hard for me, if they get to the Super Bowl, to stand up there and not say, hey, they were still right to do what they did. Now, again, the Rand Carthon thing I think was ridiculous, but I certainly did not have my endorsement when they did that. But the firing of Vrabel did. I thought Vrabel's coaching staff issues, a lot what we're worried about with Robert Saleh, I thought Vrabel's coaching staff issues were a humongous problem. I thought Vrabel had worn out his welcome. And I thought Vrabel was overrated as a coach. And if you get to the Super Bowl the first year taking over a 4-win football team, it's hard to make that argument. And I am already booked to go on the Felger and Maz program, Boston Radio, for Monday of Super Bowl week. And I do not want to go on the Felger and Maz program with people being like, Vrabel's in the Super Bowl, fuck you. And if they win, that's what's going to happen. I also will say this. Drake May is my new quarterback crush. We all know that. And I love Drake May, and I love Ann Michael May. And I think Drake May, he reminds me of Aaron Rodgers. Drake May's got the most pressure on him out of anybody this weekend because there's no pressure on Jarrett Stidham. Nobody expects Jarrett Stidham to be any good. Nobody expects the Broncos to win. There's no real pressure on Seattle and Sam Darnold anymore because Sam Darnold got to the NFC title game. So TDG and all you haters, fuck you. And then the Rams, they don't have any pressure because they've won the Super Bowl. Because they got Matthew Stafford, who's won the Super Bowl, and Sean McVay's won the Super Bowl. The pressure is on Drake May because people will think, you know what? When it comes to Drake May, he's supposed to beat Jarrett Stidham. But I think what we need to account for is the fact that Denver has the number 2 defense in the NFL. And we need to account for the fact that Denver's defense, unlike New England, wasn't playing the Miami Dolphins and Tua all year. They were playing Herbert and Mahomes when he was healthy and those guys. Now, I know they didn't play Mahomes' second game, but still. I look at Will Campbell versus Nick Bonito. I don't think Will Campbell can play left tackle in the NFL against good players. So, because of that, and the fact Denver's a very hard place to play, Sean Payton's going to have a great game plan. He is going to tell Jarrett Stidham exactly what he wants him to do. He is not going to turn the ball over the way C.J. Stroud turned the ball over last week. This may go against my better judgment. I'm taking the Broncos. And I think the Broncos are going to win. Now, the NFC Championship game. If there's any team I didn't want Seattle to play, it's the Rams. Because the one team that gives Sam Darnold fits, it's the Rams. And yet at the same time, and I have all the respect for McVay, and I have all the respect for Stafford, I think the Seahawks are a wagon. And I think they're a wagon outside of Sam Darnold. Now, I think Sam Darnold is the engine. And I think if you put Geno Smith back at quarterback, they're not the number one seed. They're not the best team in the NFL. And they're not rolling the way that they've rolled to the NFC title game. Because all these guys that you guys make excuses for when you don't want to give Sam credit, whether it's Kenneth Walker, Jackson Smith, and Jigba, those guys were on the team last year. But I think Seattle, just like Denver, is a very hard place to play. I think the Rams are a little beat up. I think their coaches have been entertaining too many jobs. I think Sam Darnold does not lose the football game for Seattle today. I think Seattle wins. And you know I've got a lot of equity in both of these games. Now, knowing my luck and knowing the football gods, it's going to be New England and the Rams. And so it's going to be like, Vrabel, Darnold. But I almost wanted to pick the other way because my picks have been so bad this year. Like, they've been so bad this year that I kind of wanted to pick it the other way. And I spent all week not saying that I thought the Broncos were going to win just because. And what a Vrabel special this would be, right? I just, in my heart and my head, Denver, Seattle. That's who I think is going to win. And we shall see. But TDG, I just have one question before we sign out of here. They're singing the national anthem for the game. I just want to know if Seattle wins, and I don't give a shit how many yards Sam Darnold throws for, how many attempts, I don't care. If Seattle wins, because you represent TDG, the You People Society of the Sam Darnold stinks, Cam Ward's the man. If Sam Darnold wins and gets to the Super Bowl, will you say, I was wrong about Sam Darnold? And that's okay, because Mike Borgonzi was wrong about Sam Darnold. And so was Kevin O'Connell. And so was Kwesi Odafo-Mensah. And so was everybody else. Tom Brady's calling the game. Tom Brady didn't want him. But TDG, if he wins today, will you put your hand up and will you say, I was wrong? Will you say, Sam Darnold should have been the quarterback of the Titans? That's the question. I love how Kong is like, I will take Kubiak. Kubiak is not coming here. Clint Kubiak is going to be a head coach. Clay Kubiak has said, no, thank you, I'm staying in San Francisco. TDG, it won't be because of him, though. Don't eat. No. I mean, come on now. Give me a break. All right, guys, enjoy the games. Again, I'm going Denver in the first game. I think it'll be an ugly-ish game, but I think Denver will control the game. I'll go Denver 19-13. And I think Seattle they won't blow out the Rams, but I think that they will command the game. I'll go Seattle 28-14, 31-14, something like that. Seattle wins rather comfortably. Denver wins ugly, but is in charge and in the lead most of the game. And I'll say this. If New England gets out to a lead early, like a 14-0 lead, Denver's fucked. But I don't think Sean Payton's going to let that happen. And I think we need to give Sean Payton a little credit because I went to a game with a girl that I haven't talked to in 4 years. And we went with our friends who were getting married, who are now divorced. And we ran into somebody else that I would later date for a couple of years. And we're not together anymore. But I went to a game where Trevor Siemian threw for 290-something yards and 2 touchdowns against Mike Vrabel. And they won that game because of a phantom Jerome Boger roughing the passer call on Ryan Tannehill that gave the Titans a touchdown. So do not count out Sean Payton. That's it for us. Thank you to Hiller Plumbing, Heating, Cooling, and Electrical. Like and subscribe. Tell your friends. And again, we may do a show tonight. We may do a show tomorrow. But you will absolutely be seeing me live from the Super Bowl. and we'll get a bunch of great interviews and a bunch of great content on the Titans. So tell your friends, like and subscribe. Stillman & Company. Enjoy the games, everybody, and stay safe in the storm. We'll see you around.